Oh, nice. I like it. Feels like we're at a pub. Anyway, welcome back to the Progress Lab. We have a very, very intelligent guest today, perhaps our smartest person that we've ever had on. I'm a little bit intimidated by your credentials, Tim, but Tim Crowe, welcome to the Progress Lab.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You are a PhD in nutrition/biochem, 15 years lecturer at Deakin University in that space as well. You run your own podcast and sciencey nutrition business.
That's right, yes.
That's the official name?
Yes.
Sciencey business nutrition.
Sciencey business nutrition, freelancing thinking nutrition scientist.
Amazing. Yeah. Yes. And you've appeared on multiple things, keynote speaker at not Philex, at AusActive, on The Project, ABC. Like I said, I'm very, very intimidated, but welcome. It is so nice to have someone smarter than us on
Which
the
is
podcast.
all of our guests, let's be honest.
Well, Alison, Chris, thank you very much for the invitation to speak on it. And look, I'm the biggest nerd you'll ever get on your podcast because I've been a nerd all my life. I embrace it. I live in the research, and you'll be getting a lot of that bias today from me. So happy to, but at least make it understandable for your listeners as well, which is what I do now. I'm in science communication, which I just love doing. And particularly nutrition, it's an area that everybody eats. Everyone has an opinion in.
Yes.
Which is all valid. But also there's the opinions and there's the science and then there's the practicality. So that's my aim today is to distill all that down and make it understandable.
I always think, so I wanted to start by talking about nutrition is a science, obviously.
Yes, yeah.
However, I feel like there is such a massive element of humanness when it comes to taking that science and putting it into practice.
Yes.
So I guess my question to you is, how important is the science and versus how important is bridging that gap to make the average person be able to actually action that?
That's an excellent question. So we have the science for all these clinical trials and understanding how everything works. But at an individual level, there is a lot of variation. So just purely based on your gut microbes, how your blood sugars respond to an apple will be different to mine. And that can be related to your gut microbiome and a whole lot of other things. And yet science says if you eat the apple, your blood sugars on average should do this. So we have science that gives us a foundation for broad public recommendations. But at an individual level, it can vary quite a bit because we all eat and we're all experts in our own food and how it affects us. Where the science comes in is to try and give some good guidelines of what probably is the best path to go down. And hot tip, it's not the carnivore diet, okay? You know, there's a lot of other ways you could eat, but probably not.
Here we go.
5 minutes in.
That's all we need.
I love it. So good. So good. So if you were to, I guess, based on everything that you know about the industry and just based on that, if you were to recommend to, say, a nutrition coach, do you start with the individual, the human? So like, what are you currently eating? Or do you start with the science? This is what you should be eating.
So the science informs the advice you give, but in the end, it's going to be, what does this person eat? What's their dietary preferences? What's their medical condition? What's their cultural background? What's their goals? All of that then informs of how it translates the individual advice. So if I'm working as a nutrition communicator, I give broad recommendations based upon the science. If I'm doing one-on-one work, it's about you as an individual in front of me and tailoring that, personalizing it to the individual. And that's what the work of what a dietitian would do, that individualization. But it would be informed by science, but it doesn't dominate everything.
Yeah, awesome. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
What, just on that kind of sort of social aspect that kind of ruins the science a little bit, what is it, do you think, about the nutrition industry that makes it so prone to trends? Part A. And then part B, do you think that is influenced by fashion? So I'll give you an example.
Yes.
In the 90s, it was like really cool to be waif skinny. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was also the low fat era where everybody was like, oh, fat. What are the implications of that? So it's a massive 3-part question. Good luck with that.
So the first part, first part was, what is it about the nutrition industry that makes it so prone to trends? So everybody eats and everybody gets an experience from that eating. And then from that, you can turn that into a powerful narrative of, I ate like this, insert whatever way you want to. I reversed my diabetes, therefore that's how you should eat. And as human beings, we're actually drawn to stories.
We are,
Yes.
And that they're very powerful narratives. And that is much more powerful than having what the scientific evidence always says. So those narratives can always drive new fads and new diet trends. And diets are, or ways of eating are like fashion. They do come into and out of fashion. So we've had low carb has been reinvented under many different names. It was protein power in the 70s. Then there was the Atkins in the late 90s, early 2000s. Now no one does low carb. It's keto.
Yeah.
So it's actually rebranding
Yes.
of the same sorts of advice of, cut out carbs, eat more protein, so on. And I've seen them come and go.
And
Yeah,
whose
you
fault
look at
is that? Is this the diet industry that's pushing that? Are we just stupid humans that are looking for something like shiny and
thing.
repackaged? Like, what is it?
So if you look purely about just losing weight, it is bloody hard.
Yeah.
Actually, no, losing weight's incredibly easy. People do it again and again and again and
Keep
again.
it off.
So we are drawn to new trends and new ways of doing things because the
Yes.
previous advice didn't work. Let's try something else. And that works for about 3 to 6 months, no longer works. And then you need something else to go on to. So you could say the diet industry, advice to lose weight has been an absolute failure. And it always will be because we're in an environment now that's designed to make us overweight. It's really hard to eat healthy. Now, you may think that's crazy, but we're in a food environment where we're bombarded with food marketing, junk food. You go to the petrol station, how many chocolate bars do you want with your fuel? All of that adds up to what we call an obesogenic environment. So it is difficult. So the messaging of just eat like this, just cut out this one food is the key to weight loss
Simple
is very
and appealing.
seductive.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it will work for
Yeah.
3
Yeah.
to 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's funny you say that. That's something that I tell a lot of my clients is that like almost if you're not overweight, you're probably humaning wrong.
Absolutely, you're in the minority.
Yeah, because just the way that our lives are set up in terms of the sedentary style and
Yeah,
the more advanced you generally get in your career, generally the less you kind of move around.
correct.
Combine that with like, well, the more I work, the less time I have to prepare my food. Foods that are tasty tend to be like highly palatable, higher in calories,
Very convenient.
very
yes.
convenient, and it just kind of snowballs into 10 years later, you're like, oh my God, I put on 20 kilos.
That's exactly what happens. That sums it up. And that's the environment we live in. So that's a very difficult thing to fight. And that's why the diet trends come and go because it gives a short-term, solution for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bear in mind, they just keep getting reinvented
Yeah.
For
again
sure.
and again under different
marketing.
names.
For sure.
Marketing.
And then, of
absolutely.
course, there's all of the, like you mentioned before, the social layers around food, the emotional layers around food
course,
that we
yeah.
kind of lop onto food. It's comfort. It's, so I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone that just says, oh, food is just food, that's ignoring a big part of
100%.
humanness.
There is so much that what drives us to eat
Yes.
is not just based on the macros and the
Yes.
nutrients. There's many other factors as well. So,
Yeah.
very complex.
Yeah.
So it's much more complex than just saying, just eat healthy, eat less food and you'll be right. Well, that's the science, but the practicalities is very difficult for an individual. So individualizing that is what has to be done. Combined with the physical activity side as well, that can certainly help, but probably it's the food side that's the most important.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, just on that, you do programming, as in
Yes.
workout programming.
Yeah, for sure.
It's pretty easy to follow. Well, Chris is my coach and I don't follow the programming, so I feel bad saying this, but it's easy to follow a programming for an hour a day. But nutrition is 24/7. It's always there,
That's a
right?
great insight. Absolutely. Yeah. It's always happening. We're always thinking about food. If you don't know how much you think about food, if you've ever tried intermittent fasting, you realize how
Speaking of
much you
trends.
think
Yeah.
about food.
Yeah.
That's a huge one.
Yeah, huge.
There's a big one at the moment.
Yeah, definitely.
So
awesome.
that's one, if you actually start following it, you start getting fixated on food because you actually realize for the first time what it feels like to be hungry rather than just having an appetite and desire for food.
Yeah.
It's funny that the psychology of that, because I have clients where they'll be like, oh, I've just put myself in a 200 calorie a day deficit and I am like dying here. And then if you would actually work the math out, they're actually still at maintenance, but because they've told themselves now we're in a cutting phase.
Preoccupation.
And the brain is like, I don't want to lose weight.
Yes.
This is bad. This is dangerous. So I'm going to tell you to go seek it out more. So it's so funny when someone makes that decision, all of the implications after that, and then what kind of feeds into how they're feeling. They're like, I just feel so run down. And you're like, it's been 2 days. Like, you can't be that tired based off what's going on. But
Yes.
yeah, it's crazy.
And so in the research space, back into the science, is there anything in the last 15 years that you've seen that's like, whoa, we didn't know this? Or is it more that the more studies that you look at and the more science that we look at, it's really just reinforcing the same thing, guys. Let's eat a few more whole foods. Let's drink our water. Let's cut out alcohol. But The problem is that we can't bloody teach people to comply with it.
That is it. If I look at the most exciting area of research the last 15 years, it's the gut microbiome.
Yes.
Gut, like it's huge. And there's a huge amount of validity to how much our internal gut microbes control our mental health, our blood sugars, all sorts of things. And yet, what is a gut health diet? Pretty much look at dietary guidelines. That's gut health. You don't have to hack things. You just eat lots of fruits and vegetables and don't eat a lot of crap. So in the end, it's the same messaging of eating healthy, but you've got this really sexy area of research called, gut health and gut microbes, but it actually puts you down the same pathway of actually eating healthy. So that advice has changed very little.
Yeah.
It's just new research comes in to explain why eating like this is of benefit for your health.
Right.
And for some people, that can be motivating to actually have a reason why to be eating like this will actually have these sort of outcomes, and that can be useful. But really, the science is always evolving, but the food recommendations actually haven't changed that much. And the problem is not many people do them.
Yeah.
Well, that's the funny thing is when people will complain about the guidelines, and I'm like, how often have you actually stuck to them? Because if you actually stick to them, you're eating pretty bloody well.
You're probably doing better than, well, let's see, some research I've seen, the amount of Australians, at least for women, following all the dietary guidelines is about 2%.
Wow.
The amount of discretionary food we have is about 30 to 40% of our calories each day. They're not guidelines. That's what people are doing. So you have the reality of what we're eating as a population versus the guidelines. And let's blame the guidelines for causing all these problems when very few people follow them.
Yes.
It's not a panacea for all your health problems, but if you ate more in that sort of prescription of, of healthy diet, you'll be doing pretty well. You're getting the basis right to then modify it from there.
It's the same for the guidelines for daily movement, like 30 minutes of vigorous exercise, 5 to 6 times a week.
That's right.
Plus, it's like nobody's doing it. Like even people that come to my gym, for example, they might train, say, 3 times a week for about an hour, maybe, sometimes some more, some less. But there's still 3 or 4 other days, and sometimes people can hang their hat on the fact that I worked hard for that hour, so therefore I won't do anything for the next 48 hours. I need a rest.
Yes, yeah.
And it's like, well, no, you still need to get out and move. And if they've got kids, I encourage them to chase their kids or something. But it's funny, these guidelines, like the longer I do it for, the more I just end up going back to them. And people are like gobsmacked. It can't be that simple. And it's like simple doesn't necessarily mean easy.
No, absolutely right.
Simple's not sexy at all, is it?
Yeah.
I'd love to circle back to the gut topic,
okay.
though.
Gut health, yep.
What is the research showing? So why do we care about it now? I feel like it's become a little bit more mainstream, I guess, to speak about gut health. And I think we all
leaky gut and all sorts of
I mean the general people that aren't necessarily educated in this area but somewhat interested. We know that it's important. For me, because I probably just represent the gen pop in this area, it's just sort of like, oh, okay, don't smash too many antibiotics. Or if you do antibiotics, maybe take a prebiotic, bit of yogurt, bit of kimchi, like hope for the best. What is the research showing? Why is it important? And how is everything connected?
So really the research in gut microbiome health is really just finding a mechanism to explain eating in a healthy diet or an unhealthy diet, how that explains potentially weight gain, how it explains mental health, how it explains chronic inflammation, how it explains risk of diabetes, heart disease and so on. It's sort of like not the only mechanism, but it's probably a central mechanism to explain that, because the gut microbes, if you give them lots of fibre, which is going to be plant foods, they'll metabolize it, they'll produce a whole range of compounds which then go into our circulation, and they can have a whole range of systemic metabolic effects. That's the good news. If you're eating a pretty unhealthy diet, we're actually changing the mix of your microbiome. So going from a healthy to an unhealthy diet, you can see changes in your gut microbiome within about 1 to 2 days.
Oh,
it's
wow.
that quick. It's that quick. And the reverse is true as well.
Yeah.
So there's no quick hack for getting a good microbiome. You have to change your diet. And maintain
and
that.
hold it,
And if you maintain that, then you'll get the benefits from that, which is going to be positive health benefits.
Wow. And what is the connection? Because we hear that there's a connection with mood, mental health. Like scientifically, what is going on there? I don't understand.
So there's a lot of mechanisms thought to explain having a healthy diet, changing your gut microbiome, improving mental health. Gut microbes can act upon the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve feeds into our brain. Gut microbes can also produce serotonin, which the serotonin in our gut doesn't go into our brain, but it has other effects which can then act upon the brain. It's also involved, gut microbes can influence neurotransmitter production in the brain. So all of these potential mechanisms explain why having a healthy gut, a healthy diverse gut microbiome leads to improved mental health. And we're now seeing clinical trials in this area to support that mechanism. We see improvements in outcomes in mood and depression from a healthy diet to a change in the gut microbiome to an improvement in mental health. And that's probably the most exciting area to talk about to the public rather than just losing weight.
Yeah.
Talking about the benefits of eating healthy because it has a clear-cut benefit on your
100%.
mental health.
Yeah. That's
incredible.
Yeah, it's clear-cut.
That's crazy. And is there anything that, I mean, I think I know what you're going to say. You're going to be like, no, you just got to eat well. But is there anything that somebody can do to outrun a bad diet in that space? Like, can I just smash some kimchi and then I'll be right?
It'll have a small improvement.
Okay.
But yeah, it's going to be the whole diet because the kimchi and those things will give you a few probiotics, not a lot, a few, but really it's going to be the prebiotics, which is going to be plant foods, plant fiber, all of the chemicals in there that support the growth of bacteria. So it's really the foods that are more important. The probiotics, which are going to be fermented foods, more sort of like the icing on top of the cake, but really get the foundations of the plant foods
We
first.
spoke about this actually in the last episode because we had a wonderful boss lady on that is the founder of a health drink, and it's a prebiotic drink, probiotic drink.
Prebiotic, I think.
And the three of us couldn't figure out, and now we can finally answer it. What is the difference between prebiotics and probiotics?
Oh, okay. So I'm to get so immersed in all of this, you just assume everyone is up with the language now. So a prebiotic fuels the growth of bacteria. So think of it
Positive or negative?
Positive.
Okay,
so a
always
prebiotic
positive.
is like a fertilizer for your
okay.
gut bacteria.
Yeah.
Whereas a probiotic is actually the bacteria themselves that you drink.
Oh, the live cultures.
Injecting it
And
into
then
basically.
it will actually, not say take over your gut microbiome, but it can influence your gut microbiome. So prebiotics is like the food, which the bacteria feed off. So if you had a drink that had prebiotics and probiotics, you're giving the food for the bacteria. And just to make your head spin, there's now another area called postbiotics.
Oh, for God's sake.
Postbiotics are the things produced by bacteria or the bacteria themselves that have been broken down and killed. The internal mechanisms of them can also have biological effects. So prebiotics, postbiotics, probiotics, all of them are just different ways to get good healthy
And is
gut.
one of them better for us than the other, or do we need all three in kind of like an equal mix?
So my opinion is it's the prebiotics that are most important.
Okay.
That's like the foundation. That's the
And that comes from good fiber, like solid
fiber. So it's not just boring old fiber that you can see. There's thousands of chemicals in food called phytochemicals, which actually can be metabolized by gut bacteria. So it's not just the fiber, it's all these other things we find in plants that can be metabolized by bacteria.
So on fiber, what typically happens when someone comes to the gym is, they train for a little bit. Depending on the gym, calories in, calories out becomes very important. They start measuring certain things, but they only ever measure protein, carbs, and fat.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is they're nailing it. They might feel pretty good. Training's going relatively well, but they have no thought about fiber. And I know this is what I did when I first entered the gym, and it was like chicken and rice and, the typical almost like bodybuilding diet. How do you convince somebody the benefits? Because obviously we're talking about fiber as a benefit, but how do we make it sexy essentially?
So this is where the gut microbiome comes in. You actually can talk about that as a way to increase more fiber compared to back in the day where fiber was about, just maintaining good bowel habits.
Yes, that's the first thing someone talks about is go to the toilet.
Well, that will certainly help with it, but it's not as exciting and motivating to talk about compared to
Mental health
feed your gut bacteria well and they will look after you.
Yeah.
All 100 trillion of them.
Yeah.
In your
Insane.
100 trillion.
Yeah.
'Cause I did hear something, and it's weird. I won't give the full detail of it, but where they've transplanted a really healthy microbiome into another, I think it was in rats, it might have been fecal matter, and the difference.
They do that in humans, don't they?
It's now being done in humans. It's called an FMT.
Yeah.
It's a fecal microbial transplant. And in animal studies, you can take the gut microbiome of one animal, maybe it's obese, put it in a healthy rat, and it will become obese from the gut microbiomes.
That's incredible.
So there's now clinical
Isn't it?
trials being done in humans now for treating a special type of infection with Clostridium difficile, really weird name, but a FMT works really well in humans to pretty much get rid of that infection, whereas other things don't. The initial clinical trials with giving healthy bacteria from a volunteer to someone with a disease or obesity hasn't played out so well, but we're still at least doing trials to see if it can affect that. So if you give a capsule, they're called crapsules.
I feel like marketing needs to work on that.
And it's not very pleasant to think how they prepare the sample, but it involves a donor
Yeah.
getting their poo in a lab and getting homogenized up and put into crapsules, and you give that to someone.
So if I look at the gut microbiome of an obese person, pick one, anyone.
That will be different.
They'll all be different. But are we almost certain that they'll all have some degree of dysfunction in that area?
Yes, correct. On average, everything's on average. On average, people who are obese will have a different microbiome from people who aren't. Now, that doesn't explain all of the reason why they've got there. It could also be that they've gained a lot of weight from having a poor diet, and having a poor diet will change their gut microbiome. So it might be a case of chicken and egg, but we do know that gut bacteria can then influence appetite as well. So on average, there will be a difference in microbiome between healthy and overweight people.
Wow.
Hence, like looking at doing clinical trials with giving a microbiome from a healthy person to an obese.
See what happens.
It's not going to be a magic bullet. We're not going to see Ozempic.
No,
Nothing will beat Ozempic for a long, long time.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about that. That's
everything
amazing.
else is sort of playing around the edges.
Yeah. And so if somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, I wonder if my gut microbiome is in an optimal phase, what are some, I guess, warning signs that our body will throw out maybe before we reach that sort of obesity stage that suggests that it might need a little bit of attention from us?
Well, there's not going to be one particular sign, but you'd just be having a whole host of different symptoms. Maybe your irregular bowel habits, gas, flatulence, those sorts of things, indigestion, skin, all of those things. Like even probiotics can actually help improve eczema.
Yeah.
So it's not unsurprising that an unhealthy gut microbiome that could affect your skin. So whole range of factors. Now, if you really want to deep dive, there are companies now that will sequence your gut microbiome.
Oh, wow.
And give you information on the current makeup of it, and then give you advice that's tailored to your microbiome.
Wow. Crazy.
So,
And the efficacy of that's really good?
It's developing.
Yeah, okay.
It's developing. So the idea is they can personalize advice. So back in the day, it was giving advice based upon your genetics.
Yes.
Now we can give advice based upon your gut microbiome. So it's certainly a niche area, but it is developing and growing.
Incredible.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Can you clear up something crazy for me? I've had 2 children. I had 2 C-sections, and they were both emergency C-sections. But one of the things that I read up on is that babies that are born via C-section don't necessarily get the good bacteria passed on through going through the birth canal. Is that correct?
That is a hypothesis that with babies born by C-section, part of a natural birth, there's all sorts of inoculation that happens of the baby because the baby's gut is sterile, and it will pick up bacteria from the mother's stool because there's all sorts of body fluids
floating around.
Floating around during birth, and that's part of the inoculation in the baby. So with the C-section, you're not getting that sort of, I was going to say contamination, but natural
like exposure
inoculation. Exposure. That's a great word for it.
Yeah.
Even babies that aren't breastfed, because breastfeeding itself is a way to inoculate a baby, have a different microbiome. So the theory goes that maybe long-term, they may set them up for different risks of certain diseases because they're not getting that initial seeding for the mother. But it's really developing research. That's observation. But it's certainly, people are considering maybe for babies born via C-section, maybe they should be given some inoculation.
Well, friends of mine took swabs of mums and then put it on baby, like on baby's scalp and stuff like that, because she was a C-section as well. It's like that's what they did, and I think it's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, what the mum can give to bubs,
and that's then set you up for the rest of your life. So,
And so somebody that might have, maybe somebody's listening to this that might be like, okay, I get it, really important, but gut microbiome. What about these sort of chronic illnesses that really seem to mess with that? I'm just thinking like Crohn's.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like those kind of things. Like what can people with those conditions do to try and improve where they sit in terms of their gut microbiome?
So it's interesting, those sorts of diseases now, there's clinical trials looking at maybe giving probiotics to help try and control some of the, because they're severely chronic inflammatory conditions, controlling inflammation with probiotics. So this is really a developing area. So it's one where you probably want to get personalised advice, but where the research is going is to modify the gut microbiome to control inflammation and in theory reduce the amount of flare-ups that people with Crohn's and ulcerative colitis get as well.
Wow.
So on that, a question that I think a few people have is like, literally only a few weeks ago, a client of mine, she's been experiencing just all sorts of difficulty with her food, digestion, whatever it is, can only stomach yogurt, is really tired all the time, is sleeping 12 hours a day, goes to a GP and, they don't really have much advice for her. They do some blood work. That's probably about it.
Yes.
And there's no immediate fix. Where does somebody go Like, is it a dietitian? Like, who do they go to see to actually get support? Because I imagine, like in the gym industry, the difference between, say, a dietitian that was qualified 15 years ago that's done no further research, although basic things haven't changed, and then, say, somebody now, like, where does that person go?
So I guess speaking on behalf of my own profession, probably a dietitian has a lot of the nutrition science training, but you can get the individualised advice. But of course, to see one in private practice, that's going to be on you to seek one out. But that would be the first port of call. But there's many health professionals with really solid health training that can give advice from a different perspective, but in the end, it will be setting you up for the same sort of way to change your diet and make some sustainable changes.
How harmful, and I'm cautious to use that word because I understand that it always depends, are antibiotics for our gut microbiome, and do you feel that they're overprescribed?
Yes, they're potentially harmful for our gut microbiome, and yes, they're overprescribed. So, and the issue with overprescription, of course, you start getting resistance, and then you need new antibiotics and so on. But it becomes an arm race. One of the use cases for probiotics that has the highest level of evidence is to control diarrhea caused by antibiotics. It worked really, really well to stop the diarrhea caused by the antibiotics. So the idea is you're repopulating your gut microbiome. So I think for anyone taking a course of antibiotics, a course of probiotics is certainly something to consider.
Yeah, and you do that after you've finished, right? Someone told me that if you are trying to take them at the same time, they're just going to kind of cancel each other out.
In theory, theory they would. Yeah.
Right. So you're best to finish the course and then start again, basically. Okay.
How would you know which ones to buy probiotic-wise? Because obviously there's fridges, there's ones on shelves. And
so many. I get asked this a lot. There's no one single brand or strain you should buy. What you have to look at is why are you taking it, for what condition, and then do a little bit of research of what strain has evidence for that particular condition.
So is there any like specific websites that help? Because examine.com used to be really beneficial for...
Examine is my favourite website, examine.com. Absolutely. They're not as good probably for the probiotics one you should get.
Yeah.
There are ones called Probiotic Examiner. There's a few sites out there that will give advice about the probiotics to use for a particular condition supported by the research.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're flying blind because there's so many different ones you can take.
Yeah, wow, incredible. Let's talk about GLP-1 drugs. Is that what they're called? Yes, that's
GLP-1.
Ozempic.
Yes.
GLP-1, that's Ozempic. Obviously, massive change in the industry. And and I've on the sort of limited amount of reading that I've done, it tends to be that most of the experts and the science actually points towards that this is a great
pretty positive,
thing, that this is a great thing for us and our society. Let's start with what's your opinion?
So I'm agnostic. Like if someone is been struggling with losing weight for many, many years, to me the GLP-1s are probably a better option than getting
lap banning
or bypass surgery. Yes. And in fact, if anything, they're putting a lot of the surgeons out of business because their benefit is huge. Yeah, they clearly work for weight loss.
Yeah. What are they doing in the body?
So in the end, they're controlling insulin secretion and it's feeding back onto probably appetite. But through that, we're seeing these secondary effects that the GLP-1s are having, potentially are reducing craving, or definitely reducing cravings for alcohol. So it's affecting our desire for a whole range of things, potentially as a treatment for even gambling addiction.
Wow.
As well.
So there's something in that like dopamine.
There's a lot going on in the brain. So it's not just to do with, it just makes you less hungry and you eat less food. There's a lot more things happening. When I look at the evidence for all of the other secondary benefits it's having, the weight of evidence is there probably have benefit for other factors as well.
Yeah. Because even libido, I've heard it kind of kills off a libido a little bit.
Yes. So there are downsides to them. But if you lose, let's say you're overweight, you're obese and you lose 25% of your body weight, your risk of dying from cancer, heart disease, diabetes plummets. Absolutely plummets.
And then is the research there enough yet to track what happens if and when these people stop taking the drugs?
Well, we sort of know what happens when they stop taking and you do start getting weight regain. But that's where people start looking at ways to intervene to try and lessen the amount of weight that people regain.
Yeah.
Yes, Ozempic has all the headlines, but there is second and third generation drugs coming through on clinical trials, which will have less side effects and do other things as well. So it's the genie's out of the bottle. There's a recent media now about making them available on the PBS for some conditions in Australia as well. So they're going to be around. It's good to work with them rather than against them.
What type of relief would that do to a hospital setting? If there's like so many like heart disease and obesity related
Just
diseases,
a public
and
health
stuff
setting, really.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
huge amount. So you've got that argument,
Yeah.
that it would actually reduce the need to treat a whole lot of other conditions using them. So, look, there are negatives for them, but
Yeah.
I would say overall there's a positive
leaning
for them.
towards positive.
But of course, the main one, of course, is the cost of them as well, and the injections as well. But
Yeah.
for many people, they're
So they're
happy to
injections. Is it not a tablet? Is it an injection?
They're developing tablets, but it's injections.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to inject. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
there is a
I just thought
small barrier.
Holly was just popping pills. They do best.
no.
Nah. Is it possible that there are some big consequences health-wise that we just don't know about yet?
Absolutely. It could be
Sorry,
long
piece.
term. We find out that they've got major issues. At the
Yes.
moment, it's saying they're pretty
Pretty solid.
safe relative to the outcomes that they give.
Yeah. Just versus the other outcome, which is to be obese, and you're saying that puts us at so much of a risk of
course,
disease. Yeah.
So purely on it from a disease perspective,
Yeah.
yes, you could look at the mental health side of it as well. If people should be happy in their bodies and where they want to be, and that is absolutely true. But if people do want to lose weight and have had a history of failed dieting, I would look at the GLP-1s probably as a better option than ending up on the operating table for a bypass.
It's so interesting you talk about just that sort of mental shift that can happen with these drugs. And I've shared this on the podcast, but I've recently started taking ADHD medication, Vyvanse, and
No appetite.
cannot
No appetite whatsoever.
I cannot believe how little noise there is in my brain as when it relates to signaling, like that signal is gone. And so it's a little bit concerning for me because
gotta eat.
I'm an athlete, like I'm trying to be
muscle
strong.
mass,
Like
strong.
I'm definitely not trying
So
to
you'd say
lose weight.
that's a negative of the medications for you?
For me, yes. But it's just really eye-opening that I can see how as soon as that preoccupation and all that noise is kind of taken away, just how easy it is to not overeat or not eat when you're bored or not kind of reach for that dopamine. And like you mentioned, it's kind of interrupting some sort of pleasure cycle that was going on. And the lack of those signals is just incredible.
Yes. So you can see how powerful it is when you play around with brain signaling.
Yes.
There's going to be positives and negatives to that. And this could be the consequence of long term with a lot of these medications. We don't know what that's going to be doing to the wiring long term. But clearly they're doing something that's not related to just purely our desire to eat food. If it's
Yes.
affecting alcohol, problem behaviors and so on.
That's
So,
incredible.
Yeah.
And you'll see more of it coming out.
Yeah.
So there's more and
Do you
more
think
research.
that they might be used in the future to treat alcoholism and addiction?
Look, if at the moment it's observational, that you just know that all these people have taken GLP-1s and they're losing weight, but also they're
saving
all
money on the
reporting
gambling.
these other things. And
Yeah.
that's first of all anecdotes, that's case studies.
Yeah.
As you develop it up, and if you can demonstrate that it's a clear benefit, then maybe some of these drugs may be used for secondary effects.
Yeah, because isn't that
not
something that
related to
happened with
weight.
Viagra? It was designed for something else, and they're like, hang on a second, this is the bonus is it's giving guys hard-ons essentially, and then they started using it for that. Is that not the same thing?
Oh, I don't know about that one. No.
You always got to take it into the gutter, Chris. Gosh. What do we think? Just last one on the GLP-1s. From I guess, a social point of view as well, what do you think that we're doing to, let's say we have a couple that are very poorly educated in nutrition. They don't really know how to eat well. They're, it's McDonald's, it's whatever. They have children, and of course, the science would show that their children are also very likely to be
Most
obese and
definitely. Yes.
so on and so forth. If we interrupt, let's say that generation with the GLP-1 drugs, but that behavior shift hasn't happened, are we really just cursing the generations to go GLP-1s, GLP-1s, GLP-1s?
Oh, that's so meta. That's so meta, Alice. Yeah. In years to come, maybe that's what we'll start seeing if they get widespread adoption. Yeah, it's going to be affecting, family units as well as far as their cues about food and so on. Because at the moment, it's a very artificial intervention.
Yes, yeah. And just linking it back as well to the gut health, these GLP-1s, are they just causing people to eat less in general?
Yes. So mostly it's going to be resulting in
Calorie.
just
Calorie deficit.
less
So they're not-
desire for food, less interest in
Yes.
food. And if you, in the end, any diet you care to mention
Yes.
achieves its goals by making you eat less. No matter how much it dresses up all the pseudoscience and all the
Everything
magical
else.
everything translates to you're
Yeah.
eating less
Yes.
food.
Yeah.
So on these drugs, we could potentially end up in a position where the obesity is cured. However, our gut microbiome still sucks.
Yes, absolutely. Because just because you're eating less,
Yeah, we haven't got fibre.
you still have to make some good food
So maybe the
options.
obesity isn't there, but maybe the mood, the performance, the digestion, all that stuff is still off point, which is probably a big oversight.
That's right. And this is a criticism of the drugs. They just address one thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Take drug, lose weight, everything's
days.
great. Everything's
Yes.
great. You know, my
Yeah.
life is wonderful because I've lost weight. They're not addressing anything else that's going on around someone's relationship with food, the sort of, their behaviours and so on, which probably won't change and will come back once they stop taking the drug if there's not a good maintenance program put in place. So, yeah.
The carnivore diet.
Things I've called it out early on.
Yeah, we have to. We have to talk about this. I just want to know where this came from. Like, who thought this was a good idea? Was this a Joe Rogan thing? Does he push
He definitely-
carnivore diet?
He did
pushed
it. He did it for a month and lost about 8 or 9 kilos or something. He lost a huge amount of weight.
Yeah.
You know, he just did it for a month and got a huge amount of following. It comes from a US physician who's just adamant that this is the way to go. And look, it's out of all the diets I've seen in my time, and I've seen a lot of them, I rank this as probably one of the worst.
Yes.
The absolute worst. Now, look, if you want to be
Especially
like
for
a
gut health.
absolutely for gut health. But then those with the diet will say you don't need fibre. You know, there's other sorts of everything you can get from meat. So look, if you just want to eat meat and maybe a few other foods, you'll probably lose weight because you're not going to be eating
Other stuff, yeah.
It's very hard to
Big Macs and
overeat
Coke.
on just meat,
that.
right?
So that's where weight loss comes in.
Yeah.
And the argument is that you get all these other health benefits from eating like that. No, in the end, it's going to be the weight loss that.
And do people
That's the
feel like,
benefits.
anecdotally, there are people that say they feel great on that diet? Is that because their body fat's going down and that just in general they feel better because we all do when
For most
we're
people,
nice
if
and lean?
you go on a diet, if you go on a detox, if you go low carb, you just go low fat, you eat less food, you go fasting, you go carnivore, and you start losing weight and you become fixated on what you're eating, you probably will start feeling better.
Cognitive bias.
You got more energy because you've got less weight to carry around.
You're not eating as much
You're not eating
Doritos.
much crap, so maybe your gut microbiome might improve a little bit. So you generally will feel better, no matter what the diet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really common.
And then is
That's
there
motivating.
typically like a bit of a drop off, let's say a couple of months later when it's
Yes.
like, oh, actually,
3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months.
You're back to where you started.
Yeah.
You're not eating steaks 3 times a day in
Yeah.
6 months.
the
Not.
cost
Unless
of that is?
you are so hardcore.
Yeah.
And that's a very niche group out on the internet. For most people, you start reverting back to your regular
habits.
diet
And
again.
it's that non-compliance that is the, I guess, failure of this diet. And along the way, you've cooked like your micronutrients and stuff like that,
that's
right?
exactly it.
Yeah.
So call it
Yeah.
failure is probably a word you could use that in the end most people will start reverting back to the mean, to what they know. And that's just because we're humans and we start liking our treats and we've got an environment that's around us designed to make us eat like that.
Yeah, people tend to work really well in like 12-week challenges.
Yeah, fantastic. They're great. It's after the 12 weeks, though, how do you sustain that? And that takes a lot more motivation as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially like I tend to see, and not as much now because everything's pretty much performance in the gym. There's a little bit of weight loss goals or fat loss goals.
Yeah.
But like, I'll see someone, they'll like a chronic 12-week challenger and then their body weight systematically always goes back to the same body weight, whatever it be. But the difference is, say, 2-3 years from now, their body fat percentage is actually substantially higher because every time they lose it so quickly.
Yep.
They lose muscle mass along with it, but the thing that they gain the most back is body fat. So they're at 100. Let's say they're at 100 kilos and 15% body fat. 3 years from now, they're 100 kilos at 25% body fat.
That's really common. So some people like to describe it that we've got this thermostat, that we've got this fixed, weight that we're always going to be at. It's not quite like that. We've got, rather than a set point, it's a settling point. Our
yes.
body
How long you spent there.
settles around a weight.
And is that
then as you
genetic?
slowly, well, there is some genetics, but also how we eat and how we move
Yeah.
can change that. And if we get used to a certain weight over a period of time, that becomes the weight our body
Yep. Spend a
starts
year
moving
there.
to. But gradually over time, as we move into middle age, we start slowly gaining weight. So the settling point moves up.
Yeah.
And to move it back down takes a while
Yeah.
as well. So it's easy to move up. It's hard to move down because of the changes required. So just a crash 12-week, body transformation challenge. That's great. But if you're not maintaining it, your body will start going back to where it was,
Yes.
and you probably will regain the weight and start adding more later on.
Yeah, and then the way it's set up those things as well is it's the non-compliance that gets you to
And then they
fail.
self-blame.
And then, that's it. It's designed to be like, that wasn't the problem. I was the problem.
I failed, so I'm coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
need
so it's
another
that kind
12-week
of-
challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to touch on alcohol as well. I mean, we know it's not great, right? Like we get it. It's not the health drink. However, how bad is it?
It's pretty.
Is it a lot worse than we think?
Well, okay, you're getting this from a hardcore PhD nutrition person. I drink. I enjoy a drink,
What's your
and I
drink of
enjoy it for beer, wine.
Yeah.
but I enjoy it. I enjoy the social aspect.
Yes.
Of it.
Yes.
So if you look at the Mediterranean diet, that includes red wine. So it's maybe not so much that the red wine is good for you; it's how it's drunk.
Yeah.
It's drunk generally in family settings, social connection. All that has benefits.
Yes.
But alcohol itself, that's pretty much linked with increased risk of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no real health benefits.
Especially a good
from
time.
it. Yeah.
Is there a tipping point? Like, I mean, you just said you have a couple of drinks. I like a couple of drinks. I know you like it. Well, we'll talk about these in a second.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
But is there a tipping point that the science says like, hey, this is actually really causing you some issues?
1 to 2 drinks on 3 to 4 days per week is considered very low risk of anything. That's considered very moderate. Yeah,
Don't
absolutely.
they say binge drinking once a week is worse than if you just...
Yes, so binge drink, having all of your beer coupons, storing them up in the week for 1 day is worse than just spreading it out over the week. So there's probably no safe level, but at that very low moderate drinking, which is what the Australian alcohol guidelines are, there's no adverse health problems to really worry about. Once you start getting above that, then you can start seeing major increases in risk of breast cancer, colon cancer, liver cancer, heart disease, and so on. So it all starts growing from there. But at that level, it's quite low. There's a bit of theory that level may help lower the risk of heart disease. So you heard of the French paradox, of course. The French drink a lot of wine, but they've got lower rates of heart disease.
Love a cigarette.
That's considered, it's a bit of an artifact that doesn't really exist.
Yeah. The French also have really small portions, don't they?
Small portions,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. And there's a lot of their lifestyle, they walk a lot.
They walk a lot.
Yeah.
There's no
So,
elevators
yeah.
to buildings.
You just can't transport, hey, here's I'm going to cherry pick this population because they're doing a behaviour that I want to do and apply it to me. So,
Yeah, interesting. And so what do you think is the lowest hanging fruit for most people if they had to just pick one thing? Because I think the issue with nutrition, it's not really an issue, but like the thing about nutrition is that we've just talked about stuff that is so complex and so many different layers that come into it. And again, it's through this human filter. So we mess it up because we're just dumb humans.
Yeah.
So what could most people be doing that's not trying to be perfect, but just will improve their general health and well-being like today?
Just one extra serve of any fruit or vegetable you'll care to mention. They're all awesome. They're all superfoods. They're all awesome foods.
Yeah.
Putting some more of those in your diet, it can be 1 serving a day, and then tomorrow try and get 2 servings.
Yeah.
The more of that you put in, the better it will be for your health, for your gut microbiome, and the more you're eating like that, the more it will displace other foods in your diet. That's it. You don't need to worry about, I shouldn't have an apple because it's full of sugar. Bullshit. That's great. Eat the apple. Is broccoli or spinach better for me? They're both good.
Yeah.
So
Choose your
What
favorite.
about frozen veg or fresh veg? Doesn't matter. We just
frozen is awesome.
okay.
So
I've heard
Great.
really good things.
nutritionally, it's just okay. Nothing beats what you grow in your backyard.
Yeah.
But we don't grow food in our backyard. We go to the supermarket,
Yeah.
and that's been weeks since it's been picked. What's been frozen has been picked and processed on site, and pretty much all the nutrition's locked in within 1 or 2 days. It is almost just as good as what we consider fresh produce. And people that have more frozen and canned produce at home eat more fruits and vegetables because of the convenience factor.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't go off because it's
Fill
sitting there for a week.
your freezer with frozen veg, whatever you like, and it will be just as good as the fresh stuff. And it's not going to go off. It's always available. It is a really simple little dietary hack. So
That is
you've
amazing.
got
As
full
a
license
lazy
to
girl,
eat
that
them.
makes me very happy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's convenient and it's cheap. It's cheaper
Yeah.
than fresh produce. So that's a really good way to eat additional nutrients. If I had to choose one food as a superfood, I know that's used
Flat out.
overused.
Kale.
It's the most
No.
boring food.
Joking.
Kale's a close second.
Yeah.
Boring old legumes.
Oh,
They're the most
okay.
unsexy foods.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a legume.
No.
Unless someone's
Come
cooked it for
on,
Unless
you've
someone's
never
cooked
had a
it for I've never
legume.
cooked a legume. Have
All
I?
right.
Have you had can of baked beans?
Oh, yes.
That counts as legumes.
Yes.
It's like
Baked bean jaffles.
Can of baked beans is like a gateway into the
Yeah,
world.
okay.
Of,
Yeah,
world of
yeah,
legumes.
yeah,
Sure,
right.
it's got a little bit of sugar in
Yeah.
it, but otherwise they are beans. So
Okay.
lentils, chickpeas, soy, kidney beans, all of that stuff. They are probably one of the best foods you could eat. They are incredibly cheap. They are
Lots of fibre.
high in fiber. They are an excellent source of protein for plant protein. They're actually good for the environment because they actually fix nitrogen. They put nitrogen back into the soil. they're just incredible foods. They are so unloved, but they are deserving of the title superfood.
Wow.
And
Because soy got a bad rap. Soy got a bit of a bad
raised
edit
your estrogen
recently.
and
And it was very much in that hormonal space. Like soy's going to give you man boobs if you're a guy.
I told that flat out.
Like,
I told people that myself.
have you?
Yeah, I told my mate that. I was like, don't eat that. Give me man boobs. Yeah, like 10 years ago.
Can we clear up the soy thing? Is soy bad for us?
So there's only been 2 medical cases I'm ever aware of reported to do with men who get some level of feminizing effects. They've been drinking litres and litres and litres of soy milk per day. So
Tell me there's a chance.
And if you measure testosterone and sex hormones in men who are consuming a lot of soy, it's no different to men that don't have soy. So it's I'd pretty much call it a myth.
Yep.
You know, that myth is busted. It's not an issue.
Yeah.
So, really good it's a really good legume, excellent source of protein and all sorts of things. So the thing is that we eat a lot of soy as milk, but where a lot of populations have a lot of soy, they're actually not having soy milk. They're actually having the soybeans where they're getting a lot of the other nutrients from it as well.
Yeah.
So is there any benefit then? Because another thing that kind of comes and goes in trends is the milks. So it was almond milk
milks.
for a while.
yeah.
Everyone was like, no, almond only. Now it's oat. I'm on oat. I think it's great.
Keep moving on. Yeah. There's a whole plethora of the milk.
Yeah.
There's cow's milk, there's soy milk a close second, and then there's everything else a distant third and fourth, if you're comparing it to cow's milk.
Right.
Yeah,
If you're not comparing it to cow's milk, great. Enjoy them. Enjoy them. Whatever taste you want.
Yeah.
But they're not equivalent to cow's milk, and cow's milk has a great source of protein, calcium, and so on. Soy is a close second, but most of these aren't true replacements. But if you just want them in your coffee, then put them in your coffee.
Yeah,
There's no issue. No issue.
So
And I talk to a lot of people that are like almost, and I have to admit, maybe I'm like this myself. It's sort of like, it feels like you shouldn't have too much dairy. It's just always like a thing, like
exactly
I shouldn't have too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so unless somebody is actually allergic to dairy, is there a problem with having full cream yogurt, full milk in their coffee, all the dairy?
So a couple of years ago, I sat on the Heart Foundation panel where we reviewed the scientific evidence for their low-fat advice.
Yes.
And the evidence had grown so much that was thrown out now. It's pretty much just full-fat dairy because it's not
Okay.
as much.
Unless calories is a focus.
Oh, if calories are focused, then maybe if you're eating a lot of cheese
not the
all the
fat,
time. But the full-fat products are perfectly fine, particularly for milk. And there's something about the fact that food is not just saturated fat and calcium and protein. It's a whole matrix of things. And for some reason in the dairy matrix, these nutrients that maybe shouldn't be so good for us aren't much of a problem.
Yeah.
So
my
food
kids
is
get full cream
more than the sum of its parts.
So with the so we've got fiber, gut health, things of that nature, and slowly people are eating less and less fiber, and let's say on average guts are getting more unhealthy. Is that why we're starting to see, say someone does, I was fine with milk 3 years ago, but now milk is really affecting me? Is that a placebo, or could having an unhealthy gut start to negatively affect the way you're digesting foods
most definitely.
representing?
Most definitely. To digest milk, you need an enzyme produced in your gut called lactase, which digests lactose. And for adults, over time, you can actually start producing less lactase.
Yep.
And if you're not digesting lactose, it's got nowhere to go. It's going to stay in your gut. It's going to bring water in, and you'll get diarrhea, bloating, and so on. So it's certainly not unknown that can happen.
So if someone had, let's say they've never bloated after a particular food, and now they're starting to see that food is like, oh my God, I look like I'm pregnant all of a sudden. Is that where you would go down that probiotic or prebiotic route where you're like, let's go and start trying to increase our lactase? Or if it was...
You have to work out what's causing it. It could be FODMAPs, which is certainly a big thing nowadays.
Yes.
A lot of issues with FODMAPs are these nutrients in food that for some people are not digested properly.
Yes.
If they're not digested, they cause bloating and gas and so on. And it's probably one of the main causes, not the only cause, but the main cause of IBS.
Yes.
And IBS is a gastroenterologist speak for we don't know. We actually don't know the cause of it.
Right, it's a catch-all
That's what it feels
term
like.
for-
That's why it's a syndrome,
Right,
not a
okay.
disease.
Yeah. So many things encompassed.
Different
many
from
things cause
Crohn's as an example,
That's a
which
disease.
is a disease.
Yeah, so
Okay.
IBS is definitely, IBD is inflammatory bowel disease, and that's Crohn's, but IBS is inflammatory bowel syndrome, and syndrome means
To cover all.
it could be anything going on.
Yes.
FODMAPs could be one of them. A whole range of other foods also could trigger, but also emotional states can affect that as well. So yeah,
So
it's very
is step
complex.
one for people that might be experiencing something like that an elimination diet?
Potentially,
or-
you could try it. If you think it's coming from particular foods, then you can get advice about trying a particular elimination diet. But the thing about a low FODMAP diet, it works really well for controlling IBS. But a low FODMAP diet is not a diet for life, because when you go low FODMAP, you're cutting out a lot of
vegetables,
prebiotics. So it
okay.
actually causes some not so favourable gut bacterial changes. So it's
Right.
great for short-term management of symptoms, but long-term, the advice is you have to start reintroducing these foods gradually, because you actually want those prebiotics, because the prebiotics get fermented, and that's great. But if they get fermented too much, then you start getting gas and bloating, which is the classic symbols of IBS. It just shows that your gut's working. That's all.
Yeah. Supplementation. So the big one, well, first of all, is there any supplements that you're like, yep, everybody should be taking this?
So as we're getting older and older as a population, protein is one of the few nutrients where recommendations go up as we get older. Okay, so first of all,
Does it really? I didn't know
it's
that.
one of the few ones where it increases. So let's the gym bro focus, getting bigger. Yeah, protein is really important. Athletes about 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight, potentially higher. But just for middle-aged to older adults, losing muscle mass is a major issue. Puts you at high risk of a whole range of diseases and disability. As the older you get, it's called sarcopenia, which is pretty much just muscle atrophy. Additional protein plus resistance exercise is really powerful in helping to reverse that muscle loss in older age. And the problem is that, eating lots of protein may be great, easy if you're quite young, but as you get older and older, it actually is harder to get the amount of protein you probably need, which is going to be about 1.3 and above grams per kilogram body weight.
I reckon there'd be some people that would barely get like 30 or 40 grams of protein in a day.
Definitely.
And that's really common. So it's hard. So this is one case where I would argue that call it a supplement, but foods fortified with protein, or even, your good old protein supplement is certainly not something to be shunned at.
Yeah.
And it's not just for the gym. It could be for older people who are just struggling to eat well. That protein will certainly help preserve their muscle mass, which will do them a lot of benefit in old age. So that's seeing a lot of interest in that in protein outside of the gym now because of those benefits.
It's that thing, right? Like if you, as soon as someone stops being mobile, the risk of everything, early death, it's just...
Well, as you know, muscle use it or lose it. So you have to keep that. But to obviously grow the muscle, you need the additional protein, which is why the recommendations go up. And if you're not getting enough protein, then you're setting yourself up for long-term risk of disability.
Wow.
So that's probably one where there's a good hype for the supplement to do with protein.
Awesome. And then for someone that is maybe looking for that athletic edge, let's say, and just wants to maximize performance.
Yes.
What do you think are the biggest ones there? Or is there any that are really necessary? I mean, creatine gets the best.
Absolutely.
The best rap for sure. So if there was, is there any non-benefits to taking creatine, or is that like a goer?
Oh, okay. So creatine, clear evidence sets of benefit for sports performance. And I did a huge podcast on this about a month ago, looking at the non-exercise benefits
Cognitive
of creatine, on the cognitive, mental health benefits, potentially bone benefits. It's a growing area of research that creatine could be a supplement to have into older age as well.
Wow.
So you're seeing a greater benefits of creatine in older people. If you're young and healthy, you take creatine, you're not going to get a superpower memory. If you're older and your brain starts to not function as well, creatine seems to help improve memory. So
and is that 5 grams a day, like the sort of standard?
Pretty much 5 to 10 grams a day will do it. So this is one where, from a sports supplement, big tick. There's only really 4 supplements I'd recommend based on evidence.
Yes.
Creatine, caffeine, beta-alanine, and beetroot juice. Maybe a couple of others, honourable mentions, but they're the 4 that actually well supported by evidence of having performance benefits. Throw in whey protein on top of that as sort of protein.
Like a food.
Well. Yeah,
one of those things is not like the others. Beetroot juice. Yeah, what's the go there?
So beetroot juice
Cardio stuff.
contains, or beetroots in particular, most vegetables contain something called nitrate. And in our body, that's actually converted to nitric oxide, which causes our blood vessels to vasodilate, means it gets bigger. It improves insulin sensitivity and improves oxygen uptake. And in more short-term sprint activity and sports, there is a measurable performance benefit from having that additional oxygen availability. So well-researched, well-supported by evidence that beetroot juice or beetroot shots can help with sports performance. One side effect is it'll turn your poos will turn purple. Having it. But otherwise,
that's kind of fun, really.
And does it matter when you take it, or
it has to be taken about 2 hours before, 1 to 2 hours before before your sport.
Yeah.
Did I hear you something just on that? Did I hear you say, and it might have been someone else, the difference between taking, say, protein post-workout versus a little bit before and a little bit after?
So the research is really mixed on this.
Okay.
I would say overall it doesn't make a big difference. Except for maybe in older people, there's an argument that potentially protein after resistance exercise may be of more of benefit. For everybody else, this mythical post-exercise anabolic
the window. Yeah.
It's
like
not 2 hours. It's probably
Barndorf.
6 to 8 hours. It's pretty
Okay.
much 24 hours.
Yes.
So the timing is probably not that important. The thing is with protein, because we need quite a lot of it when we're training, maybe for getting it over the course of the day, it may be easier for you to focus pre or post, and that's where it's of benefit. Really fascinating research study done just a year ago where it really dismissed the idea that we can only metabolize about 25 to 30 grams of protein per time. They used 100 grams of protein given in one dose to volunteers, and they could measure effects up to 8 hours later.
Oh, cool.
But it's interesting, the authors of the paper said it probably is not going to change recommendations because you really don't want to have all your protein in one go.
Of course.
Yeah.
But it shows that we can utilize
It's probably not
as
amazing
much
for
protein.
digestion. Yeah.
But
So on that, the argument that I would say, because I've had this conversation, even with dietitians that have recommended it, and I get that even if it's wrong or false, there's still big benefits to saying you can only get 25 because it forces you to spread it out over the day.
You're sort of spreading your meals out over the day. But if you have a whole lot of protein at once, your body will utilize it.
Yeah.
Which is great.
And that's what I say to people where they're like a nurse that's just worked 10 hours. They've come off a shift. They've had like a Mars bar. That's about it. That's all they've had for the day is like, well, unfortunately, if your goal is performance, you probably need to have your dinner and maybe like half an hour later, go and have a protein shake or something because that's going to be more beneficial than just the dinner.
Most
like
definitely.
It's like it's the advice of like what you do over the whole day matters more than what you do for one meal. What you do in a week matters more than what you do in a day. And then you just extrapolate that out. But I'm glad that you say that because there are a lot of people that are still like, oh, there's no point now. Once I got my 25 grams, it's done. I've got to wait hours and hours.
You can smash it all. And if that is of benefit, if you've got the shift worker, got a busy workout schedule, they're traveling, it's going to be hard to eat regularly. So it's just good to know that if you do have when you are eating, all right, I've got some food available, I'm going to have a protein shake, I'm going to have a steak, I'm going to really just have the protein. Just because I know it's going to be hard at other times, that protein you're eating likely is going to be utilized and it's going to count towards your requirements for the day of call it 90 or 100 grams that you need per day if you're doing a lot of strength work, and it will count. So
It
that's
probably
really
takes
good.
out the need to track really because if every meal you're just like, all right, where's my protein?
Yeah.
And you're just
I
trying
know,
every
it takes
meal.
the joy out of food, like how much protein is in
Yeah.
that tuna.
Yeah.
Just make sure you have good protein sources. Spread it throughout the day, but you can go hard on one meal and that will be of benefit. So that was really great to see that research. It pretty much put to bed that advice. It has to be at small little doses.
The
You can
anabolic window.
probably have, and the anabolic window is not a window. It's a double. It's a garage door.
Yeah, amazing. That makes me so happy. Honestly, I'd be in the car like trying to open it quick before I get to the lights.
As soon as you do your last step, instead of the bench press, you've got your protein.
Yeah.
I can
make
feel
it.
it just in my
Crying, I'm like,
muscles.
wait, I need to drink.
Mama needs her gains.
And the last one was beta alanine.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about that. I tried it and it gives me the tingles.
Get the tingles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pins and needles is a classic side effect. Therefore, you know that you've bought the right stuff.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's what it does. Beta-alanine, it's an amino acid. It's not used to make protein. It's used to make something called carnosine, which is just a pH buffer, pretty much, muscles. Now, of course, if you're working in high-intensity activity, if you're throwing the weights around, if you're doing sprinting, you're producing a lot of acidity, and the carnosine will help soak up the acidity, the pH, and that translates into a small amount of performance benefits, more so in untrained than highly trained.
Right.
But there is a benefit. So it's the carnosine. The beta-alanine is acting as a pH buffer in the same way that bicarb, sodium bicarbonate, also is a sports supplement.
Is it?
Works the same.
Wow.
Yeah,
Crazy.
you can go to the supermarket, you can buy sodium bicarb. You can
You're just getting less acidic,
you can load it,
Yeah.
and that will actually reduce the acidity, and it has performance benefits in high intensity activity. So,
Sports performance strength.
Oh, incredible.
but if you take too much of it, you will get serious GI issues. Just imagine if you take baking baking powder, it's going to be acidic.
Yeah.
And is that another one where it's more of a pre-training to set you up for your session.
Absolutely, it's pre.
Yeah.
The same with I think with beta-alanine, it's something you also would take pre-exercise.
Yeah.
But the tingles is classic. I've only tried it once, but I've gone, oh yeah, within an hour later,
Yeah.
pins and needles all over your body. It's good. You're not dying.
Yes.
Not an adverse
Yeah, I got a
reaction.
bit scared. I had like an itchy face, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Whoa, the
Yeah.
bug!"
It's laced. It's laced. I bet things
Welcome to
laced.
beta-alanine.
Yeah.
But then again, it's a grade A supplement. So
Yeah. Okay.
creatine, caffeine, beta-alanine, and beetroot juice. But a couple of others could also give it a go. But they're not for everybody. They're the
little 1%ers,
They're
aren't they?
1%ers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost, you got to get
1%ers.
this.
That's
Yeah.
it.
I suppose that leads to the next question is then how do you, and we've talked about simplifying it, but like some people can get really focused on like, oh, if I don't have this supplement, or if I don't have this, and then they forget all the other things. Outside of just saying like the guidelines, what would you recommend to people to keep it simple?
To keep it simple is just going to be eating food that's as close to its natural state as possible. Mostly plants.
Yep.
If you want to go vegan, go vegan. If you want to have some dairy and want steak, have some dairy and steak. That's great. But just focus on those basics, making sure you can see a range of different foods, a range of different colours in your diet. That's really half the battle. If you can get there, that will take care of your diet. That's what a healthy diet is pretty much. Focusing then on your training, your recovery and your sleep, that's where all the performance gains come from. And these supplements we've spoken about are the
Cherry.
the 1%ers, 1 or 2%.
They're at the
And the more elite you are, the less benefit they're going to have.
Yeah.
But even then, you could take all the creatine in the world that you like, and the evidence says, yep, it's going to be of benefit. But about 30% of people are non-responders. So it may not work in you. Yeah. So
just for creatine or just for most supplements?
same with caffeine. There's some people with genetic, I'm not going to say defects, genetic mutations that they're going to metabolize caffeine differently. Now, unless you get tests done, you're not going to know. So you may be taking this supplement that is of no benefit for you. But also, if you believe it's of benefit
Yeah, the
for you.
placebo effect is
Placebo.
real.
But in the clinical trials, there's no placebo effect because you put
Double.
a placebo. We know that on average, these supplements work for people, but everybody's mileage is different
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
to throw that into the that spanner into the wrench. You could buy these supplements and they may not work for you, but you'll never know.
Yeah, and again, like suspicious, massive industry. There's a lot of money to be made in that
Huge
industry.
amount. So most of the supplements you care to mention would be in the also-ran category. They're the ones that actually clearly work based on evidence. Most of the other ones that athletes may take, fairly mixed evidence that they're going to be of benefit.
Yeah. And so things like BCAA drinks and like that's just
That was in my mind. Look, really maybe a very small benefit, but nowhere near the level of the ones I've just spoken about. Yeah, so BCAA certainly have benefit if you're in a ICU ward and you've got all sorts of metabolic issues going on.
Yeah.
okay.
For a healthy individual athlete training, probably not much of a
Especially if you're
benefit.
getting a healthy diet.
Yeah, so the BCAAs you'll get in your diet, particularly if you're eating mostly, dairy, animal foods, you'll get a lot of the BCAAs, particularly one called leucine.
Leucine, yeah.
Leucine, which you'll get loads of in dairy. If you choose to have dairy foods are a great source of leucine. So that's a BCAA.
Because leucine ends up becoming quite important for women as they age, is it? Like menopausal women or?
Well, the thing is with menopause, at those hormonal changes, we certainly see a change in body composition. You see a change in creatine metabolism to the downside. So peri and postmenopausal
The hits just
women,
keep on coming when it comes to menopause.
So at least
doesn't it?
there's some supplements showing some promise to try and address these issues. But certainly for women, of course, the hormonal changes can be an issue where these supplements may be of greater benefit for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was actually one of my questions. Is there anything that the research that you've seen suggests that the advice should be, any general advice should be different between men and women?
Probably around peri and postmenopause.
Yeah.
I think that's where you can start differentiating a group of people where the advice is this is specifically for you. Broadly, it's going to be the same. We're going to focus on similar things. But for women at those particular life stages, most definitely, I think you can tailor the advice.
Yeah.
And that's around certainly protein as well.
Yeah, incredible. Because, I mean, obviously you've heard of her, Dr. Stacey Sims. I listen
course,
to a lot of her
Yeah, it's
stuff.
came to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and she speaks a lot
Big
about
proponent
how,
of that. Yeah.
Yeah, how a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the earlier research was mostly college-age men, so we actually don't have the data on women.
The dirty secret of sports nutrition research, sport exercise physiology research, is most of the subjects are men.
Yeah.
Now, it's not because all the researchers are sexist pigs. It's generally because that's the group they go for because they're available and also they're less complex.
They're
hormonally.
stable.
That's right about the cycle.
From a lab rat perspective,
Yeah.
this isn't a value judgment on men and women. From a lab rat perspective, that's why they've chosen it. Now, science acknowledges this is a major issue.
Yes.
And we're seeing more researchers trying to balance out men and women in their study because it's a major problem because there are clear differences between biological men and women based on their hormones. So, yeah, we do need different advice and we need different research in these groups to support that. So, yeah, absolutely 100% correct.
Yeah. Wow. On a gen pop level, is there anything particularly for women, because we are not as hormonally stable, let's say throughout the month, is there any sort of particular specifications we should put into our nutrition as women at different times of the cycle, or is that just probably like too micro for the average person?
So that's probably getting very, very micro. I wouldn't be able to say, yes, this is going to be of benefit or it's not. Where it can be of benefit, if you start getting not fixated, but focused on what you're eating, what's going on in your body, that will generally mean you'll make better food choices. So that's where it can be of some benefit. But as far as having a major metabolic benefit over that cycle, there's not a lot of nutrients that come to mind where it clearly will be of benefit having this nutrient at this particular stage of the cycle. But even with, I'll use creatine as an example, over the menstrual cycle, brain uptake and muscle uptake varies as well. Yeah, so that's why there's a big hormonal effects to do with creatine metabolism in women.
And there's nothing really we can do, right? Like you can't.
You just take creatine all the time.
Just take creatine. And generally, like we said, that 5 milligrams. 5
grams, potentially up to 10 grams for brain benefits, but 5 grams is a good sweet spot. But there's an argument that probably should be based on body weight because everybody's different.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Look, if there's any 130 kilogram, units out there listening, 5 grams is not enough for you. It's
Take
probably going to be
Be like me.
0.1 grams per kilogram body weight is one to aim for. But on average, 5, teaspoon a day is where to go for.
That's incredible. Last big one from me is the hydration space, and I guess just how that affects nutrition, because it's the same, right? I feel like, again, back to the trends, it's quite sort of trendy in the circles that I run in to take, what are they called? The
salt stuff.
Yeah, salts and stuff in your, and I've just been smashing them all day, and I'm like, I don't actually know if I should be doing this. Number one, I guess, is how important is hydration to the wider nutrition space? And then number two, do we need to be supplementing any kind of salt? Does the average person need to be supplementing any of that stuff?
So hydration or dehydration is a major issue in the population as we get older, particularly in older age. It's a major problem. In sport, clear performance benefits with dehydration. But for the average person going around, I reckon they're pretty well hydrated. You can test
even some of the drinks like 4 coffees a day, and
so depending on beverages, almost all beverages have the same effect. Now, everyone knows that coffee dehydrates you. It actually doesn't.
I was going to. That's what I've seen that recently.
It's a bit of a myth. It's actually.
What do you mean?
So how it works is that the caffeine has a mild diuretic effect. That's caffeine, which you habituate to pretty quickly. Now, there's another thing in coffee that, apart from caffeine, it's called water. So you drink more water than you potentially lose. So overall, that will still put you in positive balance. I'm not saying have your 8 cups of coffee is equivalent to 8
glasses of water.
Right, glasses of water. But it still counts to your fluid balance over the day. Just like most other drinks as well. Orange juice, fruit juices, sports drinks, milk, all counts as fluid.
It all hydrates in some
and even
capacity.
tea and coffee as well does count. So it's not dehydrating you unless you've never drunk coffee in your life, and that probably will. If you're a regular coffee consumer, you can drink it and it's not going to affect your hydration.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so for the average person, when it comes to hydration, is it just drink to thirst, basically, and then should your pee be almost clear? Is that the thing? Clear pee.
Yeah.
Completely clear pee.
Absolutely. If you get a lot of the mining sites in the outback, they'll have a hydration charts in the toilets. Very, pretty simple. You match the colour. Clear, pale, straw, dark yellow. That's it. That's your hydration index. Just as long as your pee's coming out pretty clear, then you're doing well.
Yeah, and we don't really need to mess with electrolytes. Like we can probably just relax on that a little bit.
Look, unless you are doing a serious exercise,
like water
humid
cuts and
conditions,
things like
where the salt can help, it actually can change the taste of the drink to make you drink more. So one of the benefits of sports drinks is you generally drink more of them because they taste better. So that will improve hydration. And there's a small benefit to increasing water uptake. For most people, that's really not something you need to worry about.
Interesting. I keep saying last one for me, and then I'm like, no, I have something else. In terms of like high-ish level sport weight cuts, let's say I'm thinking about weightlifting because I'm a weightlifter, but I'm also thinking like big weight cuts like MMA. They tend to do like very drastic weight cuts. Does the research that you've seen show any long-term damage on our health when it comes to that?
So I haven't looked at a lot of the research to do with continuous weight cycling, intuitively it doesn't seem like it's going to be good for you doing it all the time.
Yes.
Because you're putting your body under a lot of stress. Yeah. But I'm actually not too up with the research of long term what that translates into. For hardcore cutting versus just more longer term cutting, if you just want to drop body weight, this is one case where protein recommendations actually go up even higher.
Yeah.
If you're trying to bulk and cut at the same time, to use the gym lingo, you actually need more protein, because when you start losing weight, you'll lose muscle. You can't help it.
Yeah.
That's what happens. So the idea is that you take additional protein to help combat the muscle loss, because you don't want to be losing muscle, particularly for an athlete, and you also want to be bulking up. So this is where protein recommendations for athletes who want to bulk and also be cutting can get above 2 grams per kilogram body weight and above. And this is where protein supplements come in. For the average gym person, probably 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight. If you're trying to lose weight but also maintain muscle, 2 grams per kilogram body weight and above.
And then if we overdo that, so if you're someone like me that doesn't want to track and I'm just like, I'm just going to eat as much protein as I can, is that catastrophic for the body, or is it you're fine?
No, it's fine. Unless you've got
the kidneys.
pre-existing kidney disease, which too much protein can speed it up, but it doesn't cause the kidney disease in the first place. For most people, it's going to be fine. Yeah. The average Australian eats about 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight. That's the average person without focusing on protein. So we get more than what the recommendations are, but I would say the recommendations are too low.
Surprising.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But our recommendations are about 0.7, 0.8 for the average person. But for the population, I would argue that what we're eating at the moment is just enough on average.
Yeah.
And that's the average, meaning there's a lot of people that aren't getting that 1.2 grams per kilogram.
Yeah. So pretty much if you're just focusing on getting protein, you're not tracking too hardcore, but it's something that you're putting effort into, you're probably pretty good.
Yeah, if you've got focusing on your diet, making sure you've got your chicken breasts and all the other protein foods, you're doing fine. Yeah. If you're struggling with doing night shift, big training loads, just moving around, protein supplements can help to top up your protein.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Amazing. What are the top myths that you wish would just die in nutrition, that annoy you, that keep you up at night?
Oh, God, I've heard so many. One of them is a negative calorie food. It keeps coming.
Oh.
Like celery or something?
Celery was fun. So isn't that where
not worth the energy you eat?
The energy it takes to digest it is more than the energy in the calories
it's
of it.
It's so seductive, doesn't it? You eat these negative calorie foods.
Yeah.
It's a myth because
it takes off the total.
There is still some calories in the celery. It's a tiny amount, but it's not a zero number. So where eating celery helps you lose weight is if you're eating celery but you're not eating pies, then you lose weight. So negative calories, they don't exist. They don't exist. There's low calorie foods, but there's not negative calories. You can't eat yourself thin with those foods.
So you can't have like a kilo of chocolate and then 3 kilos of celery and you're like, no, we're good.
Yeah. There we go. They don't offset each other. So that's one that keeps coming and going. Probably the ones around, there's going to be an optimal diet that's has to cut out carbs to lose weight, because eating carbs is going to make you gain weight. So we've had a whole lot of diets that have keep reinventing themselves as high protein, low carb. In the end, all they make you achieve is just reducing how much food that you eat. The problem is that not that we're eating so many carbs, that we're eating too many bad carbs. And when I say bad carbs, it's going to be highly processed.
Yeah, which comes with
grains,
fat, salt,
added sugar, and so on. So it's not so much the carbs; it's just the absolute quantity of food that we're eating. And the other one is going to be processed foods. Just cut out processed foods.
Oh, I'm glad you.
So that's a bit of a hot button topic. So what's a processed food? Well, pretty much unless you're eating fruit, raw vegetables, raw eggs.
Everything's processed.
Everything is processed. So cooking is processing. So processed food, it's as an unhelpful term. And that's why we're now developing this term called ultra processed foods.
Yes. Right.
Seeing more and more about it. I'm a bit, it's a useful term. Rather than saying that food's processed or not processed, it's ultra processed. And ultra processed means that it contains ingredients that are very different from their original state. It's gone through some levels of industrial processing, extrusions, and all sorts of weird things that happen in a food factory. And there's a whole lot of additional things added to it that are not just salt and fat and sugar.
So basically it's strayed so far from its original state that it's not recognisable anymore.
Pretty much. Yep. Now, most of the foods that we eat too much of are what we call ultra-processed foods, the discretionary foods. And if you eat lots of these, you've got a high risk of obesity, heart disease, cancer, depression, yada, yada, and so on.
And they're easy to overeat because they taste really good.
And they easy to overeat because of that change in the matrix of the food. they promote passive overconsumption. So that's where the big problem is. So we're seeing more of this demonizing of food, calling them ultra-processed food, when in fact they're just foods that we call junk food or discretionary food. It's really just a different label. But it's useful because rather than just say processed foods are bad, processed foods are awesome. Most of what we eat is processed and it's healthy. It's the ultra-processed foods that are the problems. So,
So if I've got my little pre-packaged frozen meal and it's my little like gym bro meatballs and it's got some beans and it's got some rice, it's processed, but it's probably still good,
it's
right?
incredibly healthy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that's a good way to differentiate between there's foods that are good for you that have processed to an extent and foods that are ultra-processed, and they're the ones that we should be eating less of.
Yeah.
But that's going to be confectionery, chips, cakes, pies, and so on. So the ones we already know.
We already know. All this stuff we already know.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So
Yeah. This has been an incredible chat. Have you got anything else?
No, my one question. This is
Yes.
what have we got
to
there?
end on
Are the energy drinks? Energy drinks.
This is the most popular drink on the internet right now, the White Monster.
You will never see Chris without a Monster in his hand.
I try to limit myself to about one a day because I find them quite tasty. They've got like no calories in them. Some people use these pre-workout as a pre-workout versus alternative measures, whether it's no dose or from a caffeine perspective.
Sure. Yep.
And you'll have half the internet saying this is going to kill you because it is ultra processed, even though it's probably possibly not. When you look at the actual ingredients, when you see energy drinks, what does your brain say straight away?
So I see caffeine.
Yep.
Hence the use of pre-workout drinks.
Yep.
Right. And the thing about energy drinks, no dose, you know how much caffeine's in them. So a lot of the research with caffeine and sports performance, it's at defined doses. If you buy a coffee from your local friendly barista, you actually don't know how much caffeine, and it's huge variation.
Yes.
So it is a way to make sure you get your measured dose.
Yeah.
It contains a bit of, that one doesn't contain sugar, but some of it contains sugar, which can be of benefit. But for most people, it's going to be just a source of liquid sugar.
Yeah. Because I've seen someone, a very popular video that popped up on TikTok not long ago was somebody putting all the ingredients in a glass, and it was like there's actually nothing really wrong with it when you look at the ingredient breakdown. But when people see it, their first point of call is like it's poison.
Yes.
And look, don't get me wrong, it's not something that I'm like I don't go around. I used to sell them here. Now I don't sell them here because they are delicious and people end up having them a lot. But it's funny the knee-jerk reaction, like someone that potentially drinks 30 drinks a week will look at that and be like, that is terrible for you.
So in the scheme of it, there's worse things you've been doing for your diet. The issue, though, is more of them for teenagers because that's a lot of...
I can't believe how many kids I see.
There are some medical case studies of serious heart problems from kids just drinking a ridiculous amount of these caffeine.
Now, is that
so
from
for
the
you as an
caffeine?
adult with a fully functioning prefrontal cortex, you can probably work that out that you shouldn't overdose on caffeine because you know that's what you're
So
getting.
is it purely from the caffeine or is it from the other things?
No, caffeine.
The ginseng
it's
instant.
caffeine.
No.
Ginseng has a small stimulatory effect.
Yeah.
They call it guarana.
Guarana, inositol.
Guarana's code for caffeine.
Yeah.
Is it?
Okay.
Yeah. It's
Really?
caffeine.
They're the same thing. Oh my God.
So that the hard issues in the kid is the fact that they could potentially get the same thing if they were smashing 10 coffees a day.
Yeah.
It's more
But they're not going to because they're not going to go to their little, they're going to have their little espressos.
Of course.
They're not going to. So that's where the issue is.
Yes.
If you have that much
So
caffeine,
easy
it's going to be wired. And
Yes.
Yeah. No one wants no one wants to hang out with a teenager after 10 of those. Yeah.
No,
So that's the biggest issue with pre-workout drinks. But if you're taking it as a pre-workout drink for the caffeine, great. It's going to give you a benefit for that.
You're going to make a lot of our listeners very, very happy by
finished. Yeah, Kurt right now just cracked 3 of them in a row, and he's just like Stone Cold
like,
Steve
I knew
Austin.
I knew it. My body's a temple.
Yeah.
What's the caffeine content of one?
160. So 2 coffees.
160.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a fair hit. So would put you in the sweet spot, about 2 milligrams per kilogram body weight.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Is that too much?
No, 1 to 3 milligrams per kilogram body weight for caffeine. Okay. That's where the sports performance.
All right.
benefits
So you're
come in.
basically saying this is
So
an
put it this way,
ultimate health.
Oh, it's a health food.
Yeah. Yes.
If only it was green, it'd be the ultimate health
All the
food.
colours of the rainbow.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
It's to put it into sports performance or in 1,000 milligrams or 1,001 milligrams is where it's now illegal to take in a competitive situation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So So if the doses intravenous is 100% illegal straight away, no matter the dose. But if you get over 1,000 milligrams of caffeine in your system at the time of competition, that's against the rules.
Well, we know it's performance enhancing.
Absolutely, it's legally performance enhancing up to a certain level, which is pretty extreme because that would be a high dose of caffeine.
Yeah. I mean, I know people that take 300 to 500. They're big people, like 110 kilos muscle mass. But yeah, there you go. Cool.
you go.
So I'll have 4 of those a day. Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. Chris has been validated. Everyone's happy.
That's
Oh,
all,
thank
that's all
God.
people want is when
Yeah.
you validate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Here's the positive sides of what you're doing. I'll ignore the negatives.
Yeah,
exactly right.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. This has been fascinating
Yeah, it's been really
and
good.
very eye-opening. Thank you so much
Great to
for
chat with
joining
you
us.
both.
Yeah,
Been wide-ranging chat. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
immensely.
absolutely loved it. Thank you so much.
Anything to details where people can find you?
Mm.
We're going to plug some things.
So all I'll plug is my podcast, Thinking
I actually listened to
Nutrition.
that the other day.
So most of the things I've spoken about today, I guarantee you'll find a podcast
Yes.
episode on it. And
Yeah.
my
Awesome.
latest one was on creatine.
Yeah.
The non-exercise benefits of it. It just went crazy, went gangbusters as far as reach and downloads.
Yeah.
Lots of podcasts on sports performance supplements, lots of stuff on diet and mental health, diseases, all sorts of things. So
What's it
check that
called?
up. It's called Thinking Nutrition.
Yeah.
Thinking
Available
Nutrition.
where all podcasts can
Yeah.
be found. And there's no selling you of anything. There's no subscription. There's no product promotion. It's just about the nerdy nutrition science.
I
Love that.
We'll link
Yeah.
it in the notes
Yeah.
to this.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll
this
try my
has been
best.
awesome. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Great to chat.
Yay,
Cheers.
that was
Cool.
great.
That was awesome.
Oh my God, that was awesome.
That was really good. Can you push the record button? And
So that's rehearsal, though.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.